Hi guys, well today we're going to be taking a look at the NZXT Manta. So NZXT unveiled this exciting little gem just this week, and based on its size you'll be surprised to know that this case is primarily designed for that tiny form factor of Mini-ITX. So the idea behind this case isn't to squeeze as much as possible into a compact space. The idea with Manta is that it follows a tower design and that has a creative feature workspace for all of your high-end kit, including large all-in-one liquid coolers. Manta is NZXT's first attempt at the Mini-ITX platform, and this stylish computer chassis has all the right curves in all the right places. And it does so with reinforced steel panels to make this computer case robust and sturdy. So Manta will be available to buy in February of this year, in fact in just a few days time, and it will come with a price tag of $99.99 in the UK. And then over in the States you're looking at around $139. So yes, this is quite a pricey case, and that pricing actually puts it into the same territory as aluminium Mini-ITX cases. But hopefully after today's observation we'll be able to ascertain whether it's really worth that asking price. Okay guys, well let's start at the front of Manta. So we have this panel here which is fundamentally plastic, but it is reinforced with steel, so the front section here is cool to touch. And it's obviously going to be a bit more durable than plastic. So this panel, as you can see, closed off, so there are no areas there for ventilation or support for things like 5 1/4 drive bays. But there are, however, two strips which run down the outer edge there, which have perforated mesh to allow you a bit of air to pass through there, since we do have some cooling fans located at the very front. And if we remove this front panel here, you can see first of all we've got that dust filter, which can be easily removed and cleaned. That just unclips. And underneath we have dual 120mm cooling fans, and those are configured there to be intakes, so they're going to push across the internal components. You can also see that there are mounting holes for two 140mm fans as well. So if you did want to upscale, you can do, and we can of course also drop in some radiators as well. I'm going to have a look at the radiator support and investigate that a bit later on. Now the front panel connectivity is located at the very top of Manta, and it consists of just a power button on the left hand side there, and then two USB 3 ports and a headphone and microphone jack. So not a huge selection of options there, but we are pleased to see USB 3 instead of USB 2. Now these ports sit on the top panel, which just like the front of Manta, it features a plastic fascia, but it has that steel reinforcement. So again, we have a nice robust panel over the top here, and it has that lovely curve and some accent lines and indentations. In similar fashion to that front panel, we have a completely closed off section here. The ventilation strips do run down the outer edge, it kind of keeps that consistency, and it also alludes to the cooling at the very top of the case. So if we remove that top panel, we have placements there for dual 120 or 140mm cooling fans, and again we're going to have a look at the radiator support towards the end of the video. Now coming to the sides of Manta, we have that prominent panel which has a large perspex window there, which should give you a nice overview of the system configuration. And then over on the reverse we have just a solid panel which is closed off. Now again, just like the other aspects of this case, these panels here are engineered with steel reinforcement, so they are pretty thick and sturdy. And in keeping with the overall design of this case, the contours are curved and almost rounded to give us a bit of a break from the usual sharp and harsh lines that we are generally accustomed to with other cases. So to detach those panels, there are dual thumb screws on either side, which actually remain attached to the side panel, which is quite a handy thing to have there. And if we just remove these panels, then you can see just how robust these panels are, and that there is no flexing whatsoever. Okay, so here is a quick overview of the internal design with our components installed, and this case here houses the Mini-ITX form factor. Okay, so let's now take a look at the features in some detail. So first of all, we come to the power supply. At the bottom of the case here, we've got this section which is kind of concealed behind this metal cover, and you've probably seen a similar concept from NZXT before because they've used this on previous cases. Now the power supply has the rubber mounts underneath, and to install it you're going to need to slide it in from this reverse side. And as you've probably guessed, there is a detachable dust filter underneath there, so that pulls out quite easily with the case stood on its feet. Now since Mini-ITX usually just supports the single PCI Express lane, Manta therefore has just two PCI Express covers, and those sit back into a recess, and they use thumb screws for easy removal. Above the PCI Express we have another 120mm cooling fan. This one here is positioned to be an exhaust, and with those cutout strips there down either side, you can actually move the fan up or down depending on where exactly you would like that to sit. And we've already mentioned at the very top we can host dual 120 or 140mm fans. You can see more clearly now those dual 120mm front intakes, and it's worth noting that all of the fans inside Manta are by default linked into the PWM fan hub on the reverse of that motherboard tray. And there are some additional headers there to support even more fans, and that hub, by the way, is requiring a Molex connector from the power supply for power. Now for storage, we can install up to 3 2.5-inch drives or 2 3.5-inch drives. So there are 2 SSD plates on this prominent side here, and you can either pop the drive into that tray with or without the screws. The tray actually holds it quite well without. The only downside to the current design is that the branding label on the drive will typically be upside down. A bit of an oversight there. Over on the reverse, we can install another SSD at the bottom or a larger 3.5-inch. And then we've also got the allocation there for installing a 3.5-inch vertically, as shown. So the curved panel there is obviously a necessity with such a design, as it means there is not going to be any obstruction, as it does sit outside of the physical dimensions and the physical design of the chassis. Okay, so next up we're going to be taking a look at the clearance options, the clearance limitations inside Manta, as this is going to give you guys a bit of an idea of what kind of hardware you can fit inside the chassis. Okay, so first up we've got the CPU cooler. So there is approximately here 160mm of clearance for the total height. We've got installed a low profile Noctua cooler, as Mini-ITX cases are generally quite compact, but Manta has no such limitations for the CPU cooler. So you're going to be able to house things like the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo and other bigger coolers. Looking at the graphics card area, we have around 330mm of clearance, so that's kind of slightly less than NZXT actually claim, but nevertheless that should cover quite a large selection of graphics cards on the market. Now the card does sit quite close to that power supply cover beneath, so we have around 50mm of space there, so just something to bear in mind. Behind the motherboard tray there is 20mm to measure, but of course we also have that nicely designed side panel, which provides us with even more clearance space for the cable management. So both of those things together form the basis for excellent cable management inside Manta, along with plenty of hooks, and also NZXT has engineered this cable duct here, which you can really go to town on creating a nice, clean and tidy setup. Now we have dual 120 and 140mm cooling fan spots at the front and the top of Manta, so this naturally points us to water cooling radiator support. So at the top there we've got the ability to install something like a 240mm all-in-one solution, like we have. Now due to the motherboard sitting quite high up on the tray there, you're probably going to need to divide the radiator and the fans just like we have. But thankfully, that top fascia there is deep enough to house the radiator, so there are no problems. And we can do the same thing at the front. Just bear in mind that if you do have the radiator and the fans together inside the chassis, then that is going to obviously reduce the space there for the graphics card. Right guys, well for the last part, let's see how loud these cooling fans are inside Manta. So what we're going to do is power the system up, and I'm going to get my microphone as close to those fans as possible and just in and around the case. And this should give you a bit of a estimate as to how loud those fans are and what kind of noise levels you can expect. Okay, so that is the NZXT Manta. So pretty big really for a Mini-ITX case, but of course you do get plenty of space and to transfer all of your kit over, your high-end kit. Big graphics cards, high performance graphics card, large CPU coolers, and those of the liquid variety. And that is quite a rarity really for an ITX case, being able to install larger radiator solutions and in different places. Manta is really easy to build inside, and really the standout feature for me is the cable management. You get loads of space on that other side of the motherboard tray, you get an abundance of hooks, and you get that nifty cable duct there to tuck away your cables. The only area really to complain about is the fact we have those SSDs upside down, but I'm sure NZXT will be onto that and they'll have a fix for that pretty soon. And of course, we've got to think about the price. You know, it might be quite steep for you, some of you guys. Some of you may not be able to stomach it because it is kind of at the upper end of the ITX sector. You know, it's evident that we do get the reinforced steel, but NZXT should really look at kind of lowering the price just to remain a bit more competitive. So that is all from me today, guys. If you want the thermal performance, then please jump over to the link on the screen and in the description. We hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and go one step further and subscribe if you haven't already. Take care, guys, and I'll see you next Friday.